In this video, we're going to use the definition of the derivative to find f prime of x, where f of x is the function square root of x defined for x greater than 0, and that restriction is simply so that the square root function makes sense. So let's go ahead and recall the definition of the derivative. We have f prime of x is equal to the limit as h goes to 0 of f of x plus h minus f of x over h, and we have to go ahead and use the actual function square root of x and translate it using this formula. So we have to figure out what f of x plus h is, and in the function f of x we think of x as simply a placeholder. So the value x plus h gets dropped into that placeholder or box, and what do we end up with? Well, we get the square root of x plus h minus simply f of x, which is the square root of x, over h. Now what are we going to do? Well, when we let h go to 0, you can see what's going to happen. We have square root of x minus square root of x, which is 0, over 0, and that is undefined. So we have to do some kind of algebra in order to put this in another form so that we can take that limit in a way that it will make sense. Well, let's recall the formula for difference of squares that tells us that in general a minus b times a plus b is equal to a squared minus b squared, and we see that simply by foiling this expression. Well, in this case, we're going to think of a as the square root of x and x plus h, and b as the square root of x. Well, that will look like this piece of the formula, but what we want to do then is multiply it times square root of x plus h plus the square root of x. Well, you can't simply multiply a numerator by something. You have to multiply the whole fraction by that thing over itself, which is another way of writing 1. So we take the formula for the derivative that we have so far and we multiply the numerator and denominator by what would be a plus b, the square root of x plus h plus the square root of x divided by the same thing. And now we can use the formula a squared minus b squared. Well, what happens when we square a square root? We simply get what's inside. So let's take a look at that. We're just going to get this squared, which is x plus h, minus this squared, which is simply x, divided by h times this expression. Well, we see that the x's cancel. Then we also see that the h's cancel. And what are we left with? Well, there's really just a 1 on top, and when h goes to 0 here, that's the only place there's an h left, we get the square root of x plus the square root of x. That is simply 1 over 2 times the square root of x, and that is the derivative of the function square root of x found using the definition of the derivative.